Hi guys, James at RampantLionReviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one, we are going to have a look at another collaboration beer. So this one is half Swedish on the home side, half American on the away side, and both of the breweries involved in this one have featured on the channel before, albeit the Swedish brewery quite a bit more frequently than the American one. Now, when it comes to the Swedish brewery, these guys really made their name when it came to the big Imperial stouts. They would be known as pastry stouts these days, but they were doing lots of adjuncts and making big cakey Imperial stouts, as I called them back then. But in recent times they've been doing a lot more different styles and they've diversified quite a lot, whereas the American brewery are probably best known in Europe at least for their big Imperial stouts, but they did quite a few other things in the early days. But the beer that we're going to have a look at today is one of the Swedish brewery's latest release through Systembolaget. It's also a kind of retake, if you like, on quite a well-known beer from the American brewery too, so that should make it really quite interesting. But I've heard very, very good things about this one. It's a sub-style that I very, very much enjoy, so needless to say, I'm very curious to see what this one is going to have in store for us. Hopefully it's another good beer. Hopefully it makes for an interesting review, and as always I hope that you guys watching enjoy my take on this one as well. So yeah, for the home side of things then, we are going to head up towards Stockholm once again, the Swedish capital. We're going to go to the northwest of the city to Sundbyberg, and that means of course that we're going to have a look at yet another beer from the wonderful Omnipollo. So this particular beer is called Rare Dos. It comes in at 15.2% ABV. They're describing this one as a barrel-aged coffee and vanilla Imperial Stout, and this is brewed in collaboration with Cycle Brewing, who come from St. Petersburg in Florida, over in the southeastern US, and of course they are very well known for their Imperial Stouts as well. But yeah, this beer was released as part of the Tillfälligt temporary assortment through Systembolaget here in Sweden at the start of May 2023, so yeah, this one should be a little bit of a beast as far as I can gather. So yeah, really looking forward to this. Let's crack on and see what it has in store for us. So this is only the second time, if memory serves me correctly, that Cycle Brewing have featured on the channel. I think they did a collaboration Imperial Stout with Brewski up in Helsingborg here in Skåne, if memory serves me correctly. But we've had many big Imperial Stouts from Omnipollo before, and we do need to see about doing a solo brewery beer review from Cycle Brewing at some point soon, so keep your eyes peeled for that. But yeah, let's crack on with this one then and see what this beer has in store for us. As always with my reviews then, I'll tell you a little bit about the breweries involved here before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting, however, just fast forward. All the usual links can be found in the video description below. That's the brewery websites, the link to my other reviews that I've done, both from Omnipollo and from Cycle Brewing, and we will no doubt add more to both of those lists at some point in the near future, although it's more likely you'll see an Omnipollo beer sooner than a Cycle Brewing beer. But there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The support you give is massively appreciated, and remember you can go into the channel homepage and search for beer using the geography tagging system. So yeah, just go in there, use the search bar, put your hometown, state, county, province, whatever you like in there. If I've reviewed beers from the area that you search for, they will pop up. Failing that, of course, you can check out the playlist of beers from different countries. You'll find this one in both the Swedish and the American playlist, since it is dual nationality, and there are playlists there from many other countries that you can check out as well. But yeah, let's go on to my brewery notes then, and I'll tell you a little bit about Omnipollo first off, since they are the home brewery in this case. So, Omnipollo was founded back in 2011 by Henrik Fente, who is a long-time home brewer, and Carl Grandin, who is a clothing designer. But the two have been good friends for quite a while, and they decided to start a brewery together, having discussed quite extensively how insular the craft beer scene was, both in Sweden and abroad. And they felt that they wanted to reinvigorate the beer scene both from a stylistic and a gastronomic sense, and so they felt this partnership between a home brewer and a designer was actually very logical. And that's one thing you have to say about Omnipollo. A lot of the stuff they've done over the years was very unique for the time, and people, a lot of breweries have been influenced by what Omnipollo have done over the years. You know, the big kind of smoothie sour type things, the sort of cakey Imperial Stouts, they've had a big impact on the European craft beer scene. That's not really up for question. But the name Omnipollo is derived from omnipotent chicken, so Omnipollo, pollo being Spanish for chicken, and these guys were actually gypsy brewers until 2020. So they opened the Omnipollo's Hat in Stockholm as a collaboration with Pizza Hut. This became quite a popular bar in the city with many exclusive Omnipollo beers on tap, and some very, very good pizza. I have been there twice, if memory serves me correctly, but I need to go back and film an out and about video at some stage, of course. But in 2019, they also opened up another bar in Hamburg in Germany, one over in Gothenburg on the Swedish west coast, and one in Tokyo in Japan as well. The Gothenburg one, though, from what I understand, is no longer open. It is just the one in Hamburg and the one in Tokyo that are still surviving. But over the years, they continued to develop new recipes. They were brewing most of their beers at the Proefbrouwerij in Lokisteheefte, just outside of Ghent down in Belgium. But in March of 2020, they announced that they would open their own brewery at Sundbyberg in a former church which had previously been home to Sundbyberg Sjuksbryggeri. But when they started brewing there, the capacity started off at around 100,000 litres of beer per year, but they have been working and they've scaled this up so they can now produce around 600,000 litres of beer per year, which is quite nice. But as of May 2023, when I'm filming this review for you, these guys have produced around 390 different kinds of beer, and some of the ones that I would really recommend you check out would be the Noah, the Pecan Mud Pie Imperial Stout, whatever they're calling it these days, the Nebuchadnezzar, which is their old school West Coast double IPA, and then you've also got Fata Morgana as well, which is the kind of New England hazy IPA, one of the iconic Swedish New England IPAs, I would say, and I think they released that beer before the whole New England IPA thing was really, before it was really called that, to be honest with you. So yeah, Fata Morgana was quite an interesting one when it appeared, and a lovely, lovely beer as well, I have to say. But yeah, that is everything I can really tell you about Omnipollo for the moment. If you want to learn more about these guys, you can of course check out the brewery website. You can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and you can check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn a little bit more about all of the different beers that these guys have done. And do check out the Bianca series that these guys do as well, the big Gose, the big Lassie Gose beers that they do. Those are absolutely beautiful, I have to say. But yeah, let's go on to the American side of things then. We'll go to Florida now. So, Cycle Brewing, as I've mentioned to you already, are based in St. Petersburg in Florida, and the company was founded back in 2012 by Doug Dozark, who worked previously for Oscar Blues in, I would want to say, Longmont in Colorado, and also Cigar City Brewing, who are from Florida as well. But the brewery was originally part of Peg's Cantina, which was an eatery owned by Doug's parents, and the brewery is named for Doug's love of cycling, but they were originally just a very small brewery producing only 200 US barrels of beer per year, so I think that's maybe, what, about 30,000 litres, maybe 3,000, yeah, it's about 160 160 litres per barrel, so yeah, that's maybe about 30,000 litres, something like that. But originally they were focusing on producing different kinds of IPAs, but then they became well known for their big barrel-aged Imperial Stouts, and of course this is what has won them many, many awards over the years. But since 2018, the brewery have had a deal with BrewHub, who are a company that contract brew for smaller breweries that are restricted by like capacity, finance or geography, and this has really helped them get their beers out there a little bit more. But over the last few years they've continued to develop different recipes, build up their barrel program and get their beers further afield. They're now fairly easy to get over here in Europe actually, which is quite interesting. I think it's actually easier for us to get some of their beer over here in Europe than it is in different parts of the States. But they've also got a tap room on Central Avenue in St. Petersburg that you can go and visit as well. Having looked at the pictures, it does look very nice. And as of May 2023, when we're filming this review for you, these guys have produced around 530 different kinds of beer according to Untappd. And as I mentioned, these guys are known mainly for their big Imperial Stouts and barrel aging programs. So yeah, that is everything that I can really tell you about Cycle Brewing for the moment. If you want to learn more about these guys, again, you can check out the brewery website. You can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and you can check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn a little bit more about all the different beers that these guys have done. So yeah, let's go on and actually have a little look at this beer itself. So you can see the artwork on this one is kind of similar to things we've seen from Omnipollo before. Of course, this is Carl Grandin, but you can see plain black bottle cap there. This one, going by the bottle, has been brewed at Bryggeri over in Gothenburg, Göteborg on the Swedish west coast. Omnipollo, of course, brewed a number of their Imperial Stouts down there. They brewed a number of things at Brewdog in Scotland and other places as well. But yeah, like we said earlier, this one is a 15.2% Imperial Stout. It's been barrel aged, and they've got coffee and vanilla in this one as well, actually. So yeah, it looks very nice, actually. It should be Very nice. I love Imperial coffee stouts. I love vanilla in stouts as well, so this should be quite nice. 330ml bottle. This one cost me 100 Swedish kroner, so that translates to roughly about 9 or 10 euros at the moment, somewhere in the region of like £8 or £9 sterling, maybe about $10 American, something like that. But yeah, 15.2% barrel aged Imperial coffee and vanilla stout. This should be quite nice. Two very good stout breweries involved in this one. Let's get it out and we'll get on with the tasting then and see what it's all about. So you can see a little bit of smoke on the opening there, and we'll get this guy out into the glass and see what it's all about. But yeah, when it comes to Rare DOS, there have been several Rare DOS releases from Cycle Brewing over the years with different barrel agings, different vintages and all this. So this one, Rare DOS, I think it's called that just because it's a collaboration. I will need to check what the exact name of this beer is and then how to kind of list it for the purposes of uploading the video to YouTube. But I'm sure we'll be fine. But just so you know, there are many different versions of Rare DOS. This one is the 15.2% barrel-aged version with Omnipollo. But yeah, anyway, we've got the beer out and poured. It does look very, very nice. So you can see that this beer is poured with virtually no head. It's just got a little bit of a kind of foamy ring around the edge of the glass, which looks very nice. You can see it's got a very kind of dark tan kind of colour to it. But if we shine the light through this beer, it's pretty much black as night. A lovely kind of dark ebony rosewood colour. You can see on the edges it has a little bit of that kind of Coca-Cola, Pepsi Max coloured edge in there. One or two big bubbles sticking toward the side of the glass, a few little ones going up toward the surface there. But overall, it does look pretty nice, this one. Now, I don't think this beer, obviously you can't really see much in the way of transparency with this one because of what type of beer it is, but this one I don't think has too much in the way of oat and wheat and things in it. So we'll just have a wee look at the ingredients list on this one. It does say that it's got oats. It does say that it's got oats in it, but it doesn't mention anything about wheat, which is why I'm guessing it looks a little bit. It doesn't look kind of hazy in the way that some of these Imperial stouts can do. You can get quite a bit of opacity to them. I think this beer does have, despite its dark colour, a little bit of clarity to it. But yeah, the colour of this one, as I said, ebony rosewood. The colour of the beer, of course, depends on the, for the most part, the different types of malts that you use. This goes a long way to determining your EBC rating. 2, length of your wort boil is also going to play a role, because the longer you boil the wort, the more the sugars caramelise, thus you get a darker colour of beer. But any barrel aging you do or adjuncts you put in will affect the colour of the beer as well. But when it comes to black beers such as Imperial stouts, it's very difficult actually to affect the colour of these simply with barrel aging. You can do it a little bit more easily with the likes of Doppelbocks and barley wines and stuff like that. So yeah, most of the colour in this one will be coming from the type of malts, but the coffee may well have an influence on it as well. But yeah, in terms of the appearance, I don't think there's anything particularly surprising about this one when you consider what style it is. So yeah, let's just have a wee dig into the aroma of this one and see what it's all about. Oh yeah, I'm going to say straight away, this one smells absolutely beautiful. This is going to be an absolute monster to try this thing. But yeah, it kind of gives you everything you would want. You've got that lovely kind of woody infused aroma from the barrel aging. I suspect it's bourbon barrels this one's been aged in, incidentally. There wasn't anything listed on the Untappd page about any of the real details of this brewery, of this particular beer actually, because, and that's one thing you quite often find with, that when it comes to Omnipollo and Cycle and stuff like this. They don't tend, Cycle do, but Omnipollo don't tend to tell you too much about what they've done with the beers actually. But yeah, this one gives you everything you want. The lovely woody backbone, the coffee infused notes, you've got a bit of chocolate, a bit of brown sugar, you've got a little bit of fruitiness, really lovely smelling Imperial stout, this one, I have to say. But I wouldn't expect anything less from Cycle or from Omnipollo, I should point that out. But Imperial coffee stouts, I love these things. Coffee beans for me are potentially my favourite adjunct in beers. You know, they're as diverse as hops. They can be grown in different parts of the world, so you've got different water profiles, different soil profiles and stuff, which can affect the flavours. You've got the different types of bean as well. But from what I gather with coffee, a lot of it is about the massal, the metres above sea level at which you grow the coffee, because the higher the altitude, the higher the altitude at which you grow the coffee, the more likely you are to get these kind of fruity and aromatic flavours coming out of the coffee beans. So yeah, it's always cool to play around with these in Imperial Stouts. But let's just try and break this aroma down a little bit more and describe it for you a wee bit more kind of in depth. So this one, as I say, it's absolutely lovely. The backbone of the beer, you can smell that smooth American oak in this one. There's a little touch of vanilla to it. You also get a wee bit of the kind of bourbon spirit in there, which is great. I've always found that American bourbon whiskey is a lot sweeter than Scotch whiskey, actually. So yeah, you can certainly smell a little bit of that kind of bourbon spirit coming out of this one, which is really, really nice. But yeah, smooth American oak, a little bit of dryness from it, a little bit of vanilla within the wood as well, and then the bourbon spirit. And then above that, you start to get, it's almost like a kind of tiramisu type quality you get out of this beer. You can smell like a roasty, toasty, well-fired bread crust in there, but then, pardon me, you've got a little bit of this kind of chocolate sponge type note coming out of the beer as well. So yeah, lovely kind of chocolate sponge type beer type note coming out of this one. It's got a little bit of cocoa nibby dryness to it. So yeah, roasty, toasty, bread crusty notes in there, as I say, chocolate spongy notes. It's almost got a little bit of a kind of brandy soaked vibe to it as well, the kind of sponge cakey notes you're getting out of here. But yeah, cocoa nib for sure. You can smell there's a whole mix of chocolate coming out of this one. You've got a little bit of a kind of more 80-90% cocoa chocolate, but then you've got a bit of a sweeter, more milky chocolate coming out of the beer as well. And the more milky chocolate is probably due to the presence of the vanilla. I think that's absolutely fair to say. But then above, yeah, beyond that, you do have a little bit more of a, yeah, beyond that, you've got a little bit more of a kind of roasty, toasty, brown sugary note in this one, but you've got a hell of a lot of treacle, molasses, whatever you want to call it in this one too. So there's sweet caramel, treacle, molasses, absolutely, and then you've got that roasty, toasty, brown sugar note, and a little bit of McVitie's digestive biscuit as well. So yeah, the way this one goes together is quite nice. So yeah, the way the beer goes together in that sense is really quite nice. The malty side of this one's great. One thing I would say though about the coffee beans in this one, they do take a bit of a back seat and just add more depth to the aroma rather than anything else. So for me, the coffee beans are quite interesting because they really are quite subtle. So there is a little bit of aromaticity to this coffee. It has got quite a smooth roast to it as well. There's quite a little bit of sweetness in there. So yeah, you have this nice earthy. You've got a little bit of smooth earthy character in there. You've got a little bit of smooth earthy character in there. You've got a little bit more of a kind of floral aromaticity, and also a wee touch of a kind of black curranty, blackberry type fruit coming out of this one as well. So yeah, the way that the beer goes together in that particular regard is really quite nice. Yeah, the coffee beans, I think we're going to get more out of the coffee bean, to be honest with you, when we taste the beer rather than just from smelling it. But the more that I smell this beer, the kind of sweeter it gets actually, and that's really nice too. On the hoppy side of things, now with this one being barrel aged and it being an Imperial Stout, with it being an Imperial Stout, it's not the most hop forward of styles. With it being barrel aged, a lot of the hoppy character that is there will have dropped out of this one. But with this beer, you do actually still get a little bit of green component coming out of the beer. There's a little bit of earthiness in there. There's a little bit of herbal character. You do have a little touch of floral aromaticity and some kind of grassy notes coming out of this one too. So there is a little bit of yeah, there is a little bit of quite a little bit of nice green component to this one, but not too much, I have to add. And you can smell it. You know, the longer you leave this beer, the more that is, of course, going to drop out of it actually. But that's just how it goes. On the fruity side of things as well, this beer smells really, really nice. I mean, there's a little bit of a kind of, I do get a little tiny touch of raisin, but for me it's got a little bit more juicy plum. Lots of black currant and fig, I would say. A lot of that coming out of this one for me. And just a wee touch of, when you sugar the beer up, you get a little touch of like blackberry, but I'd say it's more black currant and fig that comes out of this one. But the fruity notes I don't think are too prominent in this one. It is more about the malty and barrel side of things, this particular beer. So yeah, as I always say, take a bit of time to enjoy the aroma of this beer before you get stuck into it. But I think it is very, very nice actually. So yeah, let's have a taste of this and see what it's all about. This one is the Rare Dos, if I've got the name right, a collaboration between Omnipollo from Stockholm here in Sweden and it's Cycle Brewing from St. Petersburg in Florida in the southeastern US. Let's get stuck in. Sláinte, skål, cheers. Yeah, I'm just going to say straight away, lovely, lovely Imperial Stout this one. Wouldn't expect anything less from either of these breweries in fairness, but that is really damn good actually, so big thumbs up. Interestingly, just on the first impression of this one, it really is like a big, kind of thick, silky type thing. The flavour doesn't really lean any particular way, it's actually just like a very, it's one of these beers that comes across as being very infused and it just takes the flavours a little bit of time to push their way out, but it's beautiful. It really is very, very good, this one. So thumbs up to both Omnipollo and Cycle for this. But let's just try and break this beer down and describe the flavour for you a little bit more in depth as we always do. So, in terms of the in terms of the middle third of your palate, then we'll start there as we always do. You can feel this lovely, smooth American oak kind of base with the beer, and you can feel it's lovely and smooth. And I've always found American oak, remember it's a different species of tree from European oak. I've always found American oak has this lovely smoothness to it, whereas European oak is a bit drier. But what I would say is that further back on the palate, you can feel that the wood is a little bit drier, but it really smoothens out as you come further forward. So lovely, smooth, oaky notes in the base there. Further forward on that middle third of your palate, you get a little touch of vanilla in there, and then you can feel the sort of bourbon spirit sugars in there, which go together really nicely too. So yeah, the brown sugary notes from the spirit in this beer are really, really nice as well. And they kind of linger into the aftertaste a little bit too. But above all of that, you start to get the actual malty side of the beer. But yeah, the barrel aging in this one is really nicely done, I have to say that. But yeah, above the kind of bourbon spirit, if you like, you've got a little bit of that roasty, toasty, well-fired bread crust in this one. So yeah, roasty, toasty, well-fired bread crust in there. Then on top of that, you've got a nice kind of sponge cakey type quality coming out of the beer. So roasty, toasty, well-fired bread crust and a lovely sort of chocolate sponge cake type quality in there. That's actually quite airy and spongy, as I said. And then on top of that, there's a little bit of a kind of caramel. It's like a caramel sponge or mix of caramel and chocolate sponge, actually, that you have there in the middle of your palate. And then above that, you have above all of that, you have the other elements coming out of this beer as well. There's maybe just a little bit of an almost brown bready character sitting on top of the kind of sponge cakey note, and then on top of that kind of brown bready character, you can feel the chocolatey side of the beer. So at the back of that middle third of your palate, you can feel the kind of dry cocoa nibby type notes. So you've got that dry cocoa nibby quality, and then as you move further forward, from that, the chocolate is, you've got a chocolate layer, and the chocolate just kind of mellows out and gets more. It mellows out and gets a little bit more kind of milk chocolate like the further into the further forward you come in the palate. As I've always said, when it comes to Imperial Stouts and so on, what you'll often find or what you'll often find with beer generally is that more bitter and dark flavours come out further back on the palate, sweeter flavours come out further forward. So yeah, at the back of that middle third of your palate, you're getting a little bit more of a kind of 80-90% cocoa chocolate, but as you come further forward, it mellows out a lot and gives you like more kind of 50-60% cocoa chocolate type quality, and you're getting a bit more vanilla there as well. So I think it's the presence of the vanilla that's, pardon me, giving you these. It's more the vanilla that's giving you these kind of lighter notes out of the kind of lighter, more milky chocolatey notes for sure. So yeah, the sort of the kind of vanilla notes that you get with this are really nice as well, and they linger there into the aftertaste. But above the chocolatey layer, you start to get the brown sugar. So it's kind of like you've got this big oily circle in the middle of your palate, so you can feel that lovely. You can feel that the base of it, there's a little bit of a kind of leathery brown sugary note there, and leathery brown sugar always usually indicates a kind of slightly longer wort boil. For me, so you've got this leathery brown sugary layer, and then above that you start to get a kind of sweeter, there's like a little bit of a toasty caramel in there, and then you have the kind of sweeter caramel above that, and then right in the dead centre of your palate you can feel the highly caramelised treacle molasses type note there, and that of course is covering the alcohol of this beer. At 15.2% ABV, this one is a bit of a monster, but it's it really covers its alcohol very, very well, this one. It's a beautiful beer in that sense. On that point, I think then we've covered everything we need to about the middle third of your palate with this beer. So let's have a look at the back third of the palate and that border region. So the border region between middle and back third of your palate, you get a nice little bit of a kind of bready, sponge cakey build up in there, and you have a little bit more of a kind of coffee bean type quality as well. So the coffee beans for me, you've got that nice roasty, toasty earthiness in this one. Just to look at the actual flavours of the coffee beans. So the coffee bean for me sits in that kind of border region between middle and back third of your palate. So yeah, you've got a nice roasty, toasty, well-fired element to these to the coffee bean. But beyond that, it's got quite a nice earthiness to it. It comes across as quite aromatic, and you do also have just a little bit of a kind of like plummy or red fruity type quality coming out of it too. But the coffee bean, as I say, it comes out more and more in the flavour of this beer the further into the aftertaste that you go. So that is really, really nice actually. But if we look at the back third of your palate now, the base of that back third of your palate is again the woody character that we were talking about, the barrel, and you can feel that the wood is there and it's still smooth, but it is definitely a little bit drier than some of the other ones were before. On top of that, you have the bourbon spirit layer, which is good. You've got that little bit of dry kind of brown sugary character coming out of it. And yeah, the bourbon sugar is still quite sweet, but again, it's just that little bit drier. You get a bit of the roasty, toasty, well-fired bread crust in there, and then you get the kind of sponge cakey layer. And the sponge cakey layer is there, but it's a lot taller and a lot more airy. And like I said to you, it's a mix of a kind of caramel chocolate sponge with a little bit of kind of dry, a little bit of a mix with a little bit of a kind of dry, like brandy soaked sponge type thing. That's chocolate caramel sponge, a little bit of brandy soaked character in there, and then above that you can feel some of the coffee bean, the dryness of the coffee bean just sitting on top of the sponge cake, and also a little bit of a kind of cocoa nibby type quality coming out of this beer as well. So the way that goes together, I think, is really quite nice. But above all of that, you're getting some of the yeasty characters coming out of the beer as well. So let's just look at that yeasty note as well. So yeah, the yeasty note for me, above everything else, it's like a really dense, cakey type quality that you're getting out of this one. It's almost got a little bit of that really, you know, dry, roasty coffee bean type note to it. There's a little bit of kind of honeycomb and sugar in there, but yeah, the yeasty note sitting on the top of that back third of the palate. Yeah, like really dense, kind of doughy, cakey sort of thing, well fired, roasty elements to it, some honeycomb and things like that. Yeah, the way that that goes together is also very, very nice actually. But yeah, the yeasty notes are quite interesting, but you get more and more dryness on the back third of your palate with this beer the further you go into the aftertaste. But certainly, back third of the palate, the flavour is a lot taller. Then as you come further forward into the middle third of your tongue, it just kind of condenses down and squashes together that little bit more. But yeah, I like that about this one. On the on the hoppy side of things, then with this beer, as I said, Imperial Stouts are not the most hop-forward types of beer, and you can feel this beer is pretty smooth in that sense. But yeah, in the back corners of the palate, you do get a little touch of earthiness. As you move further forward, the earthiness does spread forward a little bit. There's a teeny little bit of herbal quality to that. And then as you reach the kind of front corners of the palate, you've got a wee bit more kind of floral aromaticity coming out of this one as well. But then round the front curve of the tongue, you've got a bit of a lighter, more grassy character coming out of this beer, which I also think is very, very nice. But as I say, there's not too much in the way of hoppy character to this beer. Imperial Stouts are not the most hop forward of styles, and of course this one is barrel aged as well, so a lot of that will have dropped out in this one. But yeah, I think that covers everything we really need to say about the green component of the beer. Let's have a wee look at the front third of your palate then. So the border region between front third and middle third of your palate, again, you get a little bit of kind of cakey build up in there. It's a little bit like a tiramisu type thing, so you've got a bit of the kind of, you've got a lot of that kind of caramelly sponge type quality and a bit of the roasty dryness in there and a wee bit of the coffee bean, but the base of that front third of your palate is absolutely the barrel, the bourbon sugar, and then a little bit of the kind of sponge cakey note, and then above that you get that nice oily bubble where the juicy fruity esters just roll their way out of the beer. So let's look at those fruity elements to this one. So yeah, the fruity side of this beer, for me, at the back of that front third of your palate, you've got a lovely little bit, at the back of the front third of your palate, you've got a lovely little bit of a kind of raisiny sharpness there, and as you go further down you get a bit more plum, but then as you reach the base of that front third of your palate at the back, you get a little bit more, yeah, you certainly get a little bit more prune, like dry plums, you get a bit of date in there, and you also get a little bit of kind of sultana, you know, dry white green grapes. But as you move further forward, you get a little bit of oily pear. As you reach the middle of that front third of your palate, there's a little bit of oily fig, and then you get a wee bit of like a black currant as you reach the very front kind of tip of your tongue there. So yeah, a little bit of black currant underneath, and a wee bit of that more kind of blackberry type quality as well in this one. So I really do like how that pieces together in this particular beer. The oily kind of blackberry notes that you have out of this one, those are very, very nice actually. So that gets a big thumbs up from me. The oily blackberry character in this beer is really, really very nice. But yeah, the fruity notes in this one, it's kind of interesting because they do lean more toward the date, the pear, sultana, and like a sort of black curranty type thing actually. They're not quite as red as I thought they were going to be from the aroma actually. So yeah, really interesting point about this beer. But in the beginning, yeah, it does show you more of a red fruity character, but it mellows out to give you all these dry notes that I was talking about. So yeah, I think that's everything we need to say about the actual flavour of this beer. Let's round off the review with a look at the mouthfeel. So for me, definitely a full-bodied beer. The carbonation is very, very smooth in this one. It's a very silky mouthfeel that you get out of this, which is interesting. It is bourbon barrel aged, we know that, but very silky, kind of oily mouthfeel, this one. It's kind of hard to pinpoint how many IBUs this beer actually has, because it's, you know, pinpointing the IBU is just a little bit difficult with this one, because it has got a nice kind of coffee roasty dryness, as I said, but it's also got the yeah, it's also just got it's quite easy to conflate bitterness and dryness in this one. I mean, this beer for me, it's probably it's probably about 40-ish IBUs or something like that. It's not going to blow the head off you in terms of bitterness or dryness actually, but you do get more and more dryness the further into the aftertaste you go. I think that is absolutely fair to say. But yeah, on the malty side, you know, we've said that you've got the barrel in there, which is a bit of dryness and a bit of sweetness. Then you've got the big kind of sweet but still quite dry malty characters of this one. Big oily sweetness in there as well. And then you've also got, you know, you've got the coffee bean just adding depth to this one with a bit of aromaticity, dry roast and sweet fruit. So all of this going on in this beer. But then with the fruity side of things, nice little bit of red fruit, but kind of an oily, dry fruity character as well. So yeah, this is a big oily, silky, smooth and slightly dry Imperial Stout for me. The vanilla and the coffee bean are definitely there, but they sort of just add depth to the beer, and this one is a more kind of sweet bourbon barrel aged Imperial Stout rather than anything else. So beautiful, beautiful beer. I wouldn't expect anything less of Omnipollo or Cycle, to be honest with you. It hasn't disappointed, this one, at all actually. Maybe just not quite as punchy in the coffee or the vanilla as I thought it was going to be. That's the only thing I would say about this one, to be honest with you. But yeah, really like this one. It's a big thumbs up from me. So yeah, this was the Rare Dos, a 15.2% bourbon barrel aged Imperial Coffee and Vanilla Stout from Omnipollo here in Sweden, and Cycle Brewing from St. Petersburg in Florida over in the southeastern US. Beautiful beer, this one, and I'm really glad I got the chance to review it for you here on the channel. So once again, thank you for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comment section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Omnipollo and from Cycle Brewing as well, and we will no doubt return to these guys again at some point in the fairly near future. But until then, Slàinte, Skål, cheers. Check out my social media, check out Omnipollo and Cycle's social media, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Slàinte, Skål,